I just wanted to say how sorry I was. I can sometimes be selfish, but I would like to think that I've become better in the knowledge that I've upset everyone and hurt so many people with what I've done. And I'm forever sorry, and I'm so sorry. I'm really, really sorry.
County teen accused of killing and burying her newborn.
Prosecutors claim that Richardson's doctors begged her not to harm the baby.
Prosecutors say it was May 6th or 7th when Richardson gave birth to her baby girl, caused her death, burned her body, and then buried her in the backyard.
The baby's remains were not discovered until July 14th after investigators received a tip from a doctor. Fornshell says no one else has been charged in this case. And as for the father of the baby,
I'm not going to play a game of Maury Povich up here in front of you.
The allegations in this case were horrific. Especially the first time I read it, she killed a newborn baby, burned the baby, and buried her in her backyard. I mean, outrageous allegations. She became public enemy number one, Skylar Richardson. But then the trial happened on court TV. Things changed a little bit. Let's take a look.
I'm literally speechless with how happy I am. My belly is back, OMG, and I'm never, ever, ever, ever letting it get like this again. Those are the words that Brooke Richardson texted to her mother just hours after she murdered her infant daughter in the middle of the night and buried her lifeless body in the dirt behind their home.
If you could tell the jury one thing about Skylar before you get off the stand, what would it be?
She would never hurt another living being, let alone a baby.
Women who kill their children, we've read about it, we've heard about it, throw them in dumpsters. They try to distance themselves from the body. Skylar named her child. She put her in a gravesite that she could see from her bedroom window. We kept her close, put flowers on her grave, and marked the grave.
Based upon your autopsy of baby Richardson, do you have an opinion within a reasonable degree of medical certainty as to the cause of baby Richardson's death?
Yes. Homicidal violence of undetermined etiology.
With regard to count one, we, the jury in the above captioned case, find the defendant, Skylar Richardson, not guilty of the offense of aggravated murder, not guilty of the offense of involuntary manslaughter. We, the jury, find the defendant, Skylar Richardson, not guilty of child endangerment, find the defendant, Skylar Richardson, guilty of the offense of abuse of a corpse.
It was such a dramatic moment, and no one knew how this thing was going to turn out. But in the end, she was found not guilty of the most important charges, the ones dealing with homicide. Julie Grant joins us now. Julie, you know, seeing that footage again reminds me of what that moment was like. And really, it was a story for me. And people accuse me of everyone's guilty, everyone's... No. I look at the case, the evidence, and in this one, I had problems with some of the things that the prosecution did.
I'm with you, Vinny. I did as well. And that's our job, to look at a case objectively and look at the arguments that both sides can make, the facts and the evidence that are favorable or unfavorable to either side. And I'm with you. We were both prosecutors, and so we certainly know how to think like prosecutors, right? And in my opinion here, these prosecutors overshot the mark. All along, just based on our research of the case prior to it even going, I kept thinking this sounds to me like an abuse of a corpse case. And as the evidence was put before the jury, that's ultimately what they decided as the trial progressed. That's where the jury fell, that this was an abuse of a corpse, not a murder. A baby was not lit on fire, as was suggested in an interrogation video and a theory somewhat pursued by the prosecutors here. I mean, there were so many things that were just wrong with this, and evidence that factually was incorrect that made it into the case and kind of muddied up the waters.
Yeah, and you talk about lighting the baby on fire. That was the thing that made the huge headlines, and that's the one that got the public really, really angry with this young woman. And in the end, the confession to that was a false confession. It was 1,000% obvious to me, but it wasn't obvious to the investigator. And I know you spoke with her attorney, Charlie Ritkers, today. And he spoke about that. Let's take a listen.
What the government also knew is that in a second interrogation, the police officers using the Reed interrogation technique had Skylar admit to burning a body of a fetus. And now they know that's not true. I mean, look, anyone with any slight bit of common sense and reasonableness knew that that was not true, that an infant's remains don't catch on fire like a stack of dry paper and sticks. Yet, they let that sit, not only before the trial, but throughout the trial, hoping that maybe the jury would think, and again, I'm speculating, but why else would you not correct the record when you know it's false? Maybe the jury would think that Skylar actually tried to light the baby on fire with a lighter, but maybe there weren't flames, but she tried it because she said she tried it. And, you know, the scary thing is that sometimes that works. Now, that doesn't mean that that's the way in which I think a lawyer should conduct business, but that's the only explanation I have for why the government doubled down on something that we all know defies logic. We have things like documentaries, Making a Murderer, and a lot of articles and a huge movement by criminal defense lawyers across the country and the Ohio Innocence Project over the past decade or two about false confessions. Yet, a number of people find it very difficult to believe that someone who is smart, straight A student, going to college, in an interview or interrogation that is not necessarily threatening, would admit to something as heinous as that when it's not true. And the sad thing is that it does happen, and it happens every day. And in the large majority of cases, you don't have something like DNA to conclusively prove that an innocent person was wrongfully convicted because they falsely confessed.
Julie, that was the part that got me so angry, because that investigator, you know, who was part of this false confession, gets up there, wouldn't let it go. They wouldn't let it go. And to me, it undermined the credibility of their whole case.
Exactly, Vinny. You're exactly right. And I talked to attorney Charlie Rickers about this exactly. It was something that never happened. And it seems like everyone in America who was watching this trial really got a lesson in the law, in criminal justice, and what can happen in interrogations. And we know that police are able to lie to suspects. And sometimes a lot of good comes from that. I'd probably say, more often than not, good comes from that, and information that's necessary is elicited. But here, and I'm sure you would agree with me, Vinny, where the problem lies is this information was elicited. They knew it was false. They knew it never happened. We had the anthropologist who went back on their opinion, at first saying the bones were burned, and then say, well, actually, no, they weren't. And then the state said, well, we're going to double down on this and introduce all this evidence in the case. You could see why that would make the defense team furious, and why they would take those facts and say, okay, we're going to use this to our advantage. And that's exactly what happened here. The jury wasn't buying it.
Yeah, and I understand. I mean, it was absurd. All right, let's move forward now. Brooke Skylar Richardson, you asked Charlie Rickers about what she's doing now.
Skylar had been accepted to the University of Cincinnati, and then the pending case prohibited her from going down and living on campus. She reapplied after she was acquitted and convicted of a low-level nonviolent felony that I believe will be removed from her record in the near future. And the University of Cincinnati denied her second application to be admitted, which was a bummer for me. I'm a University of Cincinnati law graduate. My mom and dad are University of Cincinnati law graduates. I actually wrote a letter of recommendation to the undergraduate program for Skylar, and believe that what she's been through makes her a better candidate, actually, not worse. But unfortunately, University of Cincinnati did not accept her a second time. And thankfully, she is now at another local college and plans to complete her degree there and then move on to law school.
A lawyer, a future lawyer, Julie.
That's right, Vinny. That's what she wants to become. And it was after this trial that she really made that decision and really feeling that emotional toll that it took being the accused, knowing the countless hours her attorneys and the paralegals and all the staff in the law firm of Rickers and Rickers put in to help her through this case. And she worked for them while the trial was going on. And it was out of necessity. Charlie Rickers told me that Skylar had applied to numerous places and no one would give her a job. But they said, you know what, we'll give you one at our law office. And she did a great job. He told me that everyone there loves her. They love talking with her. They love giving her tasks so they can interact with her. And she stayed on board and is still doing a great job for them. And now has been accepted to a college in the area and will be going to school and hopefully pursuing law school thereafter.
Yeah, hopefully turning things around. I mean, I think we all agree what she did was a horrible thing. She's pregnant.
Yes.
I mean, that child could have been saved, but at the end of the day, not guilty for the homicide-related charges, and now a second chance. Julie Grant, thanks so much for that update. Really appreciate.